Hey, in this video we will be making a C++ library from scratch, showing you how to set it up in Visual Studio and how to link to it and everything that you'll need in order to use it. Alright, so I'm in Visual Studio and I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to do an empty C++ project. You can start from, like, there's probably there's a dynamic link library option here, but Visual Studio adds a bunch of stuff to your project that I don't really want to have to deal with. I just want this to be as flexible and cross-platform as possible. So I'm going to make it I'm going to make my project called File Library and create that empty project. File Library. Alright, so we know what a code library is. It's just a collection of functions, things you can do that you want to share with other people. You want them to be able to use. And libraries are conceptually separated into two parts. One part is the interface, and the other part is the implementation. So in C++, the interface is provided by a header file. This header file is going to just tell your users and tell the rest of the library code that which functions exist and which classes you're using and all that stuff. So this interface is going to be pretty much just a bunch of function prototypes that just list what's available in the library. There's also going to be an implementation. So the implementation is hidden from your users. This is what's compiled into your library file, like a DLL. So let me call File Library. You can call them whatever you want. I'm just naming them after the library because I'm just going to have one of each of these files. Header for the interface, CPP file for the implementation. Alright, so I've added both of those to my project, and I'm going to change my project so that it builds as a library. Let me go to Properties. I'm in all configurations. I could do this in all platforms. What I want to change is this general category. The configuration type should not be an application. It should not be producing an exe file. It should be producing a DLL file. So I'll make it a dynamic library. You could also make a static library. In my other video we talked about the difference between dynamic and static libraries. So I'll change it to DLL, and that should be all we need. So I want to make this this library fairly simple. Let me start off just by trying to build it. Okay, succeeded. Yay! But it didn't export any functions, so it can't actually do anything. It may not have even generated, let me check, it may not even have been generated the lib file. So yeah, here's the DLL, which is very small because it just contains the stuff you need to recognize it's a DLL. Doesn't actually contain any code at all. Has a couple of helper files that Visual Studio creates for itself, but there's no .lib file because I haven't actually exported anything. The .lib file is used to import functions in a project that's using your library. Alright, so I need to make a function. Let's make a function that's like, let's do like write to file. And let's make it really simple. You're just providing a string, the file name, and another string, which is what you're going to put into that file. So fairly simple. I'm going to need that string type, so let me include string. that is necessary for this header to work. And then string is in the standard namespace, so I could put using namespace standard, but then that's going to mean that everyone who includes my header file also gets that using namespace standard applied to their files, just the way that C++ uses this include directive, just pulls the whole header file into the file that's including it. That's not usually desired, so I'm just going to stick to prefixing these with their namespace. There we go. Makes it nice and clean. Now, there's no definition yet for this, so let's grab this prototype, toss it into our implementation file, where we will actually create a function body for it. So I still need to have that string header. Sometimes it's enough to just include your own header. You can include the file library.h header here. I'll show you how that looks. And because usually this this prototype depends on the stuff you already include in the header file, that usually works. So that can be a pretty quick go-to. So I want to write to a file. Let's include something that'll help us write to files. Output file stream. Alright, something off the top of my head. Let's open the file. Let's close the file. And in the middle, let's stick that string in there. Output file stream. This needs to be in the standard namespace. So in this file, because this file is hidden, this is going to be compiled into my library. I can do whatever I want in here. It's not going to affect any other user in this scope. Alright, that looks pretty good. So let's build it and see what happens. So it succeeded, produced a DLL, but it did not produce that .lib file. That's because I haven't exported this function. It doesn't know that this function is actually supposed to be available for my users, the users of the library. You'll also notice that the library, the DLL, has increased in size. So that's a good thing, that's positive. Alright, so to mark this thing as needing to be exported, I need to use a special decoration on this function. And this decoration is, it's a little bit non-standard, I think. I think it depends on the compiler, but most compilers will use this special, let's see, decl spec DLL export. Alright. So this will export. It's a little funky. It's got 2 underscores. This will export this function, so it's available in my library. Let me build that. Make sure that that's working. Okay. There it is. Alright. So now I got my DLL and I have my .lib file, my import library, so that other programs can actually refer to those functions. This is for exporting, but this header is going to be used by other programs too, so I shouldn't always export. I also need to import sometimes, so there's an import version of this, but I can't have 2 of these. I can't have 2 of these that have just the difference of whether they're being exported or imported. So what I need to do is conditionally compile this code, one of these when I'm building the library, and the other one when I'm using the library in a different program. So best way to do conditional compilation is with the preprocessor. So I'm going to define, let's pretend that I have this symbol, DLL export, that would be the export one when I'm building the library, and the import one when I'm using the library. So then we just have to define what this means. Define DLL export. Sometimes I want it to be DLL export, and sometimes I want it to be DLL import, and we have to decide when those times are going to be. I could signal this just with a special preprocessor definition that's only defined when I'm building the library. So if def, if defined, let's do build library. Alright, so if that preprocessor symbol is defined, we will export, else we'll define the other one, and end if to close off that logic. Alright, looks pretty good. There is a chance that code before or code somewhere else has already defined DLL export. Because this is a header, it could be included anywhere. So let me just make sure that this is not defined. If not defined DLL export, then do all of this stuff. So there won't be any redefinition, multiple definitions of DLL export. Alright, a little bit of extra kind of boilerplate code for a library, but that does the job. Let's rebuild this, make sure it all works right. Cool. Alright. I think that's fine. Oh, right. So it's telling me inconsistent DLL linkage. I actually need to define this. I forgot to do that. So I need to define build library so that this uses the export thing. So I'm going to go to my project properties. C, there is a preprocessor section, and there's a preprocessor definitions. Different values. Is this going to be okay if I just paste it in there? Sure, let's try that. There we go. Cool, much better. Alright, so there we have now, oops. Now we have our complete build of this very simple library. We have a lib file and a DLL file. So now let's test it out. Let's see if it actually works the way we expect. Let's create a new project that's going to use this library. What are we going to call it? File library demo. Okay, add a file here. Let's make a main source file. Alright, so for this, what I'd like to do is include my file library header and then go on with my life and use it. The file library header has this write to file function. So I want to say write to file, let's say test file, and this text is testing file library. Hopefully that works. So right now it does not know where to find this file library.h file. This project is in a different directory than my other one. They don't share header files, so I need to tell it where to find that. This is the same process as linking to any other library, so I'll right click on this project and add some of these special directories. I need to tell my project where to find this library. So let me add a new line to the include directories. Alright, file library, That's where it lives. You can't see it in here. Let me make certain. Yep. So it's in File Library. Okay. All right. What I usually like to do is shorten this with a relative reference. Visual Studio uses, you can use the solution dir or project dir macro. So let me try one of those. Let's see. My solution is in game 415. So $ parentheses solution dir should give me the directory of the solution, and then file library is the folder that has my header in it. And then I'll do the same thing for library directories, except this one needs to point at wherever that .lib file ended up. So that was my debug folder in this case. So debug, there it is. And I'll do the same thing to shorten this up to solution directory. Okay. So I've got the include, I've got the library. I needed to tell the linker to actually use the library that's in there, because there could be several. So in the linker category input, I'm going to change additional dependencies and add something into that list. The name of my library, file library.lib. Okay. All right. Try to build it. Okay, success. So it probably linked to my library, but we're only going to really find out unless there was an error when it didn't, or if this write to file call actually works. So let me try running it. Okay, I got no feedback here because I didn't add any to my program, but let's check if we created anything. File library demo. It's there. Test file. Ah, it works. All right, I'm happy. So the last thing to pay attention to here is that the executable of my demo needs to be right next to the DLL, or the DLL needs to be right next to my demo. So here's my file library demo.exe, and here's my file library.dll. If I ever sent this project to someone, I would need to send them both of these files, the DLL and the exe file. Those are the binary distributables for this project. All right, so that's it. That's how we make a C++ library in Visual Studio, and I will see you later.